What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at fakepigskin.com. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me once again, it's Brian Twining. Brian, what's up? We had a week off. Easter weekend, NASCAR takes the week off, and we did the same, but we are back. We have a Saturday race this time at Martinsville, so getting this out for you guys so you can prep for that race, hopefully, and all that good stuff. But how's it going?
Well, man, I'm excited to jump back into the NASCAR season here. I mean, we had a little hiatus there, which was kind of good. It allowed us to focus a little bit more on the Final Four and the national championship game, and that's it. But I'm stoked to get racing back going.
Yeah. Shouts to Baylor for being very, very good to me over the last few games. I got on a nice little heater with them, so that was fun. The Masters is this week. I'm enjoying the hell out of that. Day one in the books, basically.
As seen by your shirt there. Very nice.
Got my Masters. I will be sweating over the next 3 days with some outright bets. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, but I'm excited to get back to NASCAR. I'm excited to get back on pavement. NASCAR did announce that they will be bringing the dirt race back for next season. So I think I'm very curious to see. It was a fun exhibition to see. Obviously, ended up being on a Monday, so that wasn't great for a lot of people. But hopefully they figure some stuff out, and next year will be a lot cleaner. They also are testing tires that can be ran in those wet conditions, as long as there's no lightning or super downpours or whatever. So that is also very interesting. Obviously, cost NASCAR a lot of money to have to push back their races a couple days. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, let's dive into it. Let's talk the Blue-Emu 500, I believe. We are
Blue-Emu Maximum Pain Relief 500. Give it the entire.
Gotta give it their credit here. So let's dive into the odds. Marty Party, Truex 5-1 is your betting favorite. Followed quickly by Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, and then Denny Hamlin. So I guess, Brian, initial leans, initial thoughts. Where's your head at for this race?
I mean, again, this is one of those tracks where there are some clear-cut favorites here, being with how successful they've been here with Martin Truex and Brad Keselowski, both just absolutely dominating at this track, with Keselowski actually being the most dominant of the drivers here. I'm probably looking near the top of the board here, especially doing a little research for this race that 8 of the last 10 winners have come from guys starting from inside the top 10 or 10th or better. So, okay. I mean, you're looking at a track where unless you're starting near the front of the field, it's going to be really difficult for you to win. So that's something that will be playing into my wagers. And then also, like, looking at the last 30 races here, only 7 times has somebody who started outside of the first 5 rows, which meaning the top 10, won the race. So we're looking at 23 occurrences where somebody started top 10, won the race. So yep. I think I'm definitely leaning really heavily in this race, like near the top of the board. And of course, my boy William Byron sitting there starting third at 25-1. I just don't understand the disrespect that is still being put on this dude's name.
Yeah. Byron, if we're looking outside the top, outside 10-1 makes a hell of a lot of sense. Inside 10-1, there's 2 names that jump out for me. Obviously, Truex, he's dominant at this track, leads a ton of laps. And, in my model that I do where we dive, deeper and get a little more of a sample size, some of the corollary tracks, Martinsville is Phoenix, Pocono, Richmond, and New Hampshire, all places where he runs really, really, really well. A ton of top 5s, a ton of top 10s, some outrights, obviously good stuff to see. And then Ryan Blaney at 8-1 makes a lot of sense for me as well. Running really well. Has a ton of success, not only at Martinsville, but at the corollary courses, and is starting inside that top 10. So that's another, flag in his his hat, so to say. So those would be my favorites. I guess if you're diving inside the top 10 or inside 10 to 1 rather, is it where are you going?
I mean, we're going to see him in my DK core, but I think I'm going to go back to the well with Brad Keselowski here. I mean, he hasn't finished outside the top 10 in the last 10 races, so you know that he's going to be near the top. He's top 5 in 9 of the last 10 races here. So I mean, this guy is near the top of the field and or right there to win pretty much every single race. So I think for me, it's going to be Brad Keselowski.
What are we doing with Kevin Harvick? He's definitely tempting at 14 to 1 at plus 375 for a top 3. Has a good run of history at this track, and if you sort the my model by top 5 finishes, he has finished in the top 5 in 30 of his 50 races. So that's something you like to see. He's only won 6, so maybe a top 3 would make a little more sense. I mean, if I sort by winning percentage, bear with me here. I don't know why it's not. Anyway, so yeah, he's near the top there. I think only Kyle Busch, another guy who I don't know what to do with, it has a better winning percentage. So Harvick or Busch garnering interest from you at outside 10 to 1 at decent numbers for a top 3. We can talk about DraftKings in a bit, but when you're looking at outright markets, do either of them garner your interest?
I mean, I can't completely deny the fact that they're not intriguing to me, but they're not necessarily the same drivers that they were 4 or 5 years ago, or in Kevin Harvick's case, it does not seem to be. He doesn't seem to have the speed that he did last year when he was consistently running near the top and or in contention to win every single race. I mean, looking at the current standings as we sit right now in driver rating on NASCAR.com, Kevin Harvick is sitting at 8th and Kyle Busch is sitting at 10th. So, I mean, that is factoring in like the dirt race and stuff like that. So obviously there's going to be some skewed numbers, but they're not necessarily the same drivers that we've seen from them. And I do think that their cars are probably a little subpar as opposed to a guy like Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, Brad Keselowski, even Logano, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson. So it's not something I'll be diving too heavily into, but it is intriguing a little bit.
Outside of the outrights, is there, as we trickle down the board and look at, some longer shots, is there top 3s or top 5s that are, obviously William Byron, we both like him at 25, but, getting a plus 650 on a top 3 is a really nice payout. Something that really makes a lot of sense. Anybody else garnering a little bit of interest?
So right there with William Byron at that 25 to 1 number, I'm looking at Alex Bowman. He's got consecutive 6th place finishes here. Last year, he didn't run too well prior to that at this track, but I mean, this was a guy who we saw kind of the maturation last season, and even this year, he's kind of done better. And then one statistic that really stood out to me when looking at Bowman coming into this race is the fact that in all 4 races where he started in the double digits, he's finished 13th or better, and he has 3 top 10s in those races. So it's almost as if this guy likes starting from the middle or near the back of the pack, as he's able to kind of maneuver his way up into the field. So this is a prime example of that. He's starting 20th, I believe. So you'll see it in DK too. Like he's one of my favorite drivers this weekend for DK and in betting, top 10 market, top 5 market, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he makes a ton of sense. And obviously is providing value and has been running well, and seems to really have taken everything kind of to another gear, which is really impressive to see and really good to see. Should we switch over and talk a little DK and see where our heads are at? Because I think it's really interesting, Brian. Usually there's some crossover with our cores. This week there's none, and not that and I a lot of the guys that you mentioned I'm a big fan of, and we'll probably have some exposure to, but it's a very interesting week, I think,
Yep.
in general. And I guess let's start with my core because I'm very curious. Truex did make my core. I don't know why I put 11,000. He's 12,000, so ignore that. But yeah, at 12,000, Truex is expensive. And he's starting 7th, so I'm hoping he gets to the front quickly and gets me those dominator points. Is he somebody that you're going to find yourself getting to, or is he just too expensive for you to build lineups that you like?
No, I mean, I gotta say, I think this race this weekend, I will probably have the most variety in my lineups, and even with my core, there will be some lineups where one or two of the guys are substituted out for other drivers, with a Truex jumping in there. I mean, getting a 7th place start, you have plenty of room for those movement spots, and also getting those dominator points. And then Kurt Busch is a guy too who I actually really liked, and I almost added him into my core. He's got 3 straight top 10s here, so this is a guy who's raced really well at this track. And so it's going to be an interesting race because I don't see myself having too many similar lineups.
Yeah. So Kurt Busch is a guy that, I'm like you mentioned, has a good track record here. Is starting. Where is he starting? I was just
21st.
Starting 21st. Get up to the top 10, maybe even closer to top 5. Be feeling great about it. Almost 9K. Eric Almirola. I don't know why I like to do this to myself, but here we are. That being said, he is somebody that interests me. He hasn't had a great run this season. But he did finish 11th in Phoenix, which is a corollary course for Martinsville. He started 32nd at that track, finished 11th. He's starting in the 30s again this week, so I think he's somebody that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And then Ryan Preece at 5,600. I don't love him, but he's somebody that I think can be productive enough. And if I want to start with Truex at 12K, I have to find somebody down in this range to kind of make lineups work. And, he started 22nd and finished 19th at his last race. He started 28th, finished 26th, started 21st, finished 19th at his last 3 races. So, he's not somebody that I'm like falling all over myself to use a bunch, but like I said, if I want to make Truex happen and I want to have more exposure to those, Keselowski and to the upper echelon drivers, I'm gonna have to find some deals, and I think he's a driver that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, Ryan Preece is another guy who almost made it onto my core. I mean, I went a little bit cheaper with my other guy, as we'll see, but Ryan Preece is a guy too who, when looking at drivers in terms of like DraftKings, you're looking at guys who have the potential to give you, decent return for value. And Ryan Preece, he has 30 or more DK points in 5 of the 8 races that registered in DraftKings. So, I mean, this is a guy he's plenty capable of moving up the field and or doing stuff that'll help him, garner you those bonus points for such a small value in DraftKings, allowing you, like you said, to kind of pay up for some of those other guys.
Yep. And that's really all you're looking for when you're down that far, is just get me some points. Don't crush me. And, and if they're starting near the back of the pack, the worst they're going to do is maybe lose a couple spots and maybe you lose a few points. But I think he has enough upside and enough potential to kind of make a lot of lineups work. So I'm going to be diving in with him for sure. So let's take a look at your core. As you mentioned, a lot, we don't have a lot of crossover. That being said, a lot of these guys really, really are interesting to me, including Keselowski, who at 11,000 and is actually 11,000, makes a ton of sense. Starting 10th, so you have that place differential points. Plus, you have the ability for him to get to the front pretty easily and lead laps and have a really good shot. And when you look at the betting market, basically tied with Chase Elliott for the second shortest odds. Really good shot to win the race or at least be in contention. So, a lot of things that you can get really excited about, especially when you're looking over on DraftKings.
Yeah, so I think here my favorite one is, I mean, I guess I've just become a William Byron fanboy, but getting a guy for 8,700 who's starting third and who, has finished where he's at 5 consecutive top 10 finishes this season. So I mean, if he's already starting third, that's how the hell is he only $8,700 on DraftKings? Especially too when you look at his record this season. He's led laps in 4 of the 8 races. He's got multiple fastest laps in 5 consecutive races, and in every single race except for the road track at Daytona. And you have the potential for dominator points early on in the race for such a small, chunk of change. I think for me, he was like my first instant, like I'm markering him into my lineup. And then, you just talked about Keselowski. I hit on Alex Bowman. And then my last guy where I differed from you was Justin Haley. I went with a $200 savings for a guy who's starting 30th. So I'm getting those extra starting points for potential to move up. But for me, it was more so about the consistency that he's shown in the 5 races that he's ran this year, where he's completed the entirety of the races in every single one. So he hasn't crashed out, thankfully. And I'm probably going to jinx this. But he's got double-digit fantasy points in 4 of the 5 races, with one of them coming at 9, which, that's not fantastic. But at $5,400, all you're looking for is somebody who, like you said, is not going to get you negative, and somebody who's shown that over the time, I think is fantastic value. So I think that's why I have him in there, because I'll be able to add in maybe a Truex and go extra cheap again, or a Hamlin and go extra cheap on another guy. But
yeah, I might even get real crazy and play Heat Priest and Haley, and then really
you could
dive
just load
in.
up on the top guys,
and then get Truex and Keselowski and some other guys to kind of fill in the gap there. So I don't hate doing that either. So if obviously you want to find a way to be different, and getting some of the elite guys with some cheap options is definitely a way to do that. It's not going to be as comfortable for those GPPs for some people, and I'm fine getting there. Okay, Brian, we talked a little betting, we talked a little DK. If you're enjoying what we're doing, make sure you mash that thumbs up. Make sure you hit subscribe. Let us know down in the comments who's your favorite driver for DK this week. Who is somebody that has to be in your lineup, somebody that you can't set lineups without. But I think we got to give the people what they want. But before we do that, I do want to shout out John Adams at the Zoo by Myself for winning our bracket challenge. He had Baylor. It was pretty funny. There was 2 guys that were basically competing, and it was one had Gonzaga, one had Baylor. So we knew it was going to be solved, and Baylor wiped the floor with them. So that made things real easy. And congratulations on that.
And luckily for them, the game was over fairly early, so there wasn't too much stress.
Yeah, no, there was basically by halftime we knew what was up, and we started the celebration. So Brian, it is time right about that time. What is your best bet for the Blue-Emu Maximum Strength Casa del Migos 5,400? What's your favorite bet for Martinsville?
Oh man. Well, I could ride William Byron once again and just go for him to get his 6th consecutive top 10, but that's just a little bit too easy. So I'm going to go to Alex Bowman, and I'm going to say Alex Bowman top 5 plus 325 for the Blue-Emu 500.
I could say Kurt Busch top 5 or even top 10. I could say Eric Almirola top 5 or even top 10. But I think I'm going to play it a little safer. But I don't know, Brian, do I want to? Yeah, I'm going to do it.
Especially after last week.
Ryan Blaney, top 5, plus 115. It's not sexy, but it's plus money for a guy that I expect to finish in the top 5. And I will have that on my card. I will probably have Truex top 3 at plus 145 on my card. And then, we'll see how reckless I want to get in the outright market. But Truex, Keselowski, Blaney, and William Byron are 4 names that I will definitely be looking at. So once again, I am on Ryan Blaney top 5. Brian is on
Alex Bowman, top 5.
All right, let's see.
And then I have one more head-to-head matchup. These have been money for me. Okay, Ryan Newman minus 115 versus Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon has only finished 22nd, or has only finished better than 22nd once in the last 6 races at this track. And Ryan Newman, and he's only finished every lap one time at this track over that same span. Ryan Newman, on the other hand, has finished worse than 19th only once, which was the first race in 2019 over his last 10 races here. So boom.
Nice. The cool thing over on DraftKings, and I'm sure there's a lot of other books that do this, is you can bet stage winners. And based on my history of my drivers doing awesome for 2 stages and then completely falling apart in stage 3, you can get Martin Truex at 7-1 to win stage 1 and plus 550 to win stage 2. I might be dabbling there. And as well as William Byron to win stage 2 is 16-1, and to win stage 1 is 12-1. So that could be another way to look too, is if you really like a driver, finding, and you could always bet the outrights, but betting them to win stages too. So that way, if they're running really well and then something happens with a tire, or they just their car just doesn't hold up throughout the whole race, salvage your day a little bit. So I like looking at that as well. Brian Twining, it was good to get back. Good to talk some NASCAR. Enjoy NASCAR on Saturday. Make sure you get your lineups in. Make sure you get your bets in before Saturday's race. Enjoy the Masters if you're going to be watching that. We got baseball, we got hockey, we got NBA. It's a great time to be a sports fan. So for Brian Twining,
the Knicks don't suck,
and the Kings sort of don't suck. So things are looking up for us. For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert. We'll talk to y'all next time.